Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Brunswick. Today, I'm Charlie Cradaville, and we are starting our series of interviews with some of the candidates that will be appearing on your ballot this June 10th for the primary election. Today, it's our honor to have with us the mayor of Jersey City and a candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor of New Jersey, Mr. Steve Fulop. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you're actually a product of Middlesex County, right? You grew up in the next town over, Edison. Tell us about your time growing up across the river.
My family, when they immigrated here, settled ultimately in Edison. I went to J.P. Stevens. Went to K through 8 actually in a Jewish school in Highland Park. So familiar kind of with the logistics over here. And then graduated J.P. Stevens. Spent my whole life in Edison. My parents moved out like 5-6 years ago to Hackensack just to downsize. And Edison was a phenomenal place to grow up. Middlesex County was a great place to grow up. You know, I have all my memories of soccer and friends, and it was great. I hope that my kids have a similar experience. Ultimately, it'll be different in Jersey City, of course, but with regards to the ability and friends and the type of community that Edison was terrific.
Cool. Any fond memories of New Brunswick in your
early
days?
Like New Brunswick mostly was my older brother went to Rutgers, so he was a couple years older than me. So he was in a fraternity here. So I remember in my days in high school trying to like join him at like fraternity stuff and like that sort of stuff. So spending some time here and him, you know, like introducing me to like the grease trucks and all that stuff. So familiarity with that, and my experiences in Middlesex were mostly East Brunswick, Sayreville, where I played soccer, Edison, Metuchen, where my synagogue was, and then Highland Park, where my early years were. So and Woodbridge as well, because I had like a lot of interaction with Woodbridge for a variety of reasons. But yeah, so I mean, Middlesex is a place I feel totally comfortable.
Cool. Well, welcome back. How'd you get to where you are today? You're the mayor of the second largest city.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey. Why? What made you want to do that, and what have you learned from that?
When I graduated college, I moved first to Chicago for a year. I got a job out there, and then to Jersey City actually. And same job, Goldman Sachs transferred me to New York, and then I bought a place in Jersey City. I wanted to stay in New Jersey and proximity to New York. I left investment banking, that finance world after 9/11 to enlist in the Marine Corps. I was kind of inspired, and I thought it was a kind of a payment for citizenship. It's coming from a family of Holocaust survivors, and deployed out to Iraq, spent some time out there. And then when I came back, the mayor of Jersey City at the time was kind of a person that was outside the typical establishment. He was a great guy, first African American mayor, and he and I developed kind of this close relationship through a variety of reasons, particularly around the Marine Corps. Okay. And he asked me to run against Bob Menendez, which was a suicide mission, which I didn't appreciate at the time. But
that was back when he was a congressman.
Yeah, he was a congressman back then, but he was like the boss of Hudson County. He was the same guy. Sure. You know, he was just younger, right? But the same type of guy. And nobody would challenge him for obvious reasons. People were scared of him, and maybe ignorance is bliss. Maybe I was brave. I don't know what it was. Probably a little bit of both. And I ran and I lost, but it opened my eyes a lot to kind of public service and elected office, and this was the choice that I wanted to pursue.
Cool. And being mayor, what have you learned from that experience, and what are you most proud of in your 3 terms? So
yeah, I think being mayor as an executive, so I spent some time on the city council on the legislative side and then the executive side. I think it's the most important qualification for being a governor. Like, there's a skill set as far as being an executive and understanding the levers around that. Jersey City has been one of the best Renaissance stories in the country. We have been the laboratory of change for New Jersey. We've led on housing, affordable housing, social service issues. We've built new shelters, environmental justice, police reform. I mean, we've been at the forefront of it. And it doesn't happen by accident. It's because I'm in the weeds on that. And I'm very, very proud of the transformation that's happened there. I mean, the story of Jersey City from 12 years ago is very different than what it is today. And I don't think that would have happened without the team that we assembled there. I get a lot of the credit, but we have great people that work with me.
One of the things I appreciate about your time as mayor is you successfully got rid of the parking authority in Jersey
It did.
City.
We consolidated a lot of these autonomous agencies. I got rid of them. So
Yeah, talk about that.
yeah, so they were when you talk about shared services and consolidation, I've done a lot of that in Jersey City, and some success, some failure. But I understand how hard it is. We had an incinerator authority, which was this autonomous agency that was kind of patronage riddled. Got rid of that, folded that into public works, so there's more accountability to the public. We got rid of the parking authority, it was a similar entity, folded into public safety, more accountability. Merged the fire department with the police department to create more of a department of public safety. We were one of the first to do that. Newark replicated us, and some others did after us. And so a lot of successes. We've done a lot with the Board of Education to minimize costs and share services. Then there's failures, which is important as well. You learn from that. We tried to merge the Hoboken Fire Department with the Jersey City Fire Department. I thought there was a lot of reasons why it would work for both Hoboken and Jersey City. The mayor was supportive. The unions pushed back, and ultimately we weren't able to get it done. But I learned a lot through the process. So yeah, consolidation, shared service. Going back to being a mayor, it is a really important skill set to be successful.
And so you're running for the second time for governor. You ran in
debatable.
2017 for a bit.
I was rumored to run. Okay, let me say no. So and the perception outside looking in was that I had a very good opportunity to win and I was viable, and then I suddenly decided not to run and endorse Phil Murphy. That's kind of how it would look from the outside. The truth on what happened over there was that I had always kind of been this outsider focused on building something that was grassroots oriented, very much like this campaign. And when I got elected in 2013 as mayor and Christie was leaving, people started to talk about running for governor, and I got a lot of momentum. And then I was convinced, and I bear the responsibility for this, that the only way to be viable in New Jersey is in that typical political infrastructure. So I built a lot of relationships with these chair people.
Right, getting the support of
trying
the
to
bosses.
think through that, right? And I never felt good about it. And I never felt they were so transactional, they would leave me the next day. And if you looked at each one in isolation, to me, there was problems with how each one was approaching me and the candidacy statewide. And if you were to play it out, how it would have worked long term, I just didn't think there was a real pathway there because of how I built it. I felt that I bared that responsibility. And so I reached out to Phil Murphy. He was like nowhere on the grid at that point. He was like running third to me and Sweeney, not even perceived. He was just like a wealthy guy, ambassador. And I met him for the first time and said I was going to run and I would support him. And I largely supported him because I had mix-ups with George Norcross and Steve Sweeney, so I didn't want to see them established. And I met Phil on a Saturday, endorsed him on a Tuesday, and then the rest of the political infrastructure endorsed him on that Thursday because they got paranoid. So I think I had a lot to do with Phil being there, but I would push back on that I ran.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I looked at it for sure.
So we're finding ourselves in a similar moment now. Governor Murphy term limited.
Yeah.
There's going to be a new governor no matter what.
True.
Donald Trump elected to
Deja vu.
a second term as president.
Yeah.
Tell me about Trump. Have you met Trump? How do you see yourself either working with or working against the Trump administration?
I've never met him. I never met him. And how do I see myself working with him? I mean,
or working against him. I mean, how do you see the relationship?
I'm going to stand up for New Jersey, and I have a track record of a lot of scars and fights, whether it's George Norcross or Chris Christie or Bob Menendez. I mean, nobody has those scars that I do from actually mixing it up with these people. And I think I'm always on the side of the residents and voters. And if they were to look at it pragmatically, I'm on the right side of those issues. So you would lead to the conclusion that I would be the same with regards to Donald Trump. Appointing an Attorney General, Matt Placken, I said I would give him the opportunity to stay. I think continuity from litigation is important. I think protecting New Jersey with regards to cuts from Medicaid and the federal government, drawing down the surplus, very, very important to be bold and thoughtful around that. And I think that we can do a better job in New Jersey with leadership that would be more proactive, recognizing that Trenton is the first line of defense. So things like women's reproductive rights, transgender care, things like the Immigrant Trust Act. Like New Jersey should be leading more with bold initiatives to push back from a legislative standpoint, and I don't think we're doing any of that stuff right now. So I think I'd be a different type of governor because I'm more detail oriented and in the weeds on this stuff.
Okay. And this year, there's also going to be the race to replace you as mayor of Jersey City. You did 3 terms. You're not running again for that office. The race includes a former governor, Jim McGreevey, and several others. Do you see yourself making an endorsement or getting involved in that choice?
I don't know. I care very much about what's next for Jersey City because it takes like a long time to build things and it's very easy to be destructive. We've done a lot on like mass transit and bike infrastructure and safe streets and culture and arts, like things that are fragile. And I think that somebody that doesn't share a vision around those things could tear them down. Right now you have 4 main people running. You have Governor McGreevey that you touched on. You have Commissioner Bill O'Day, who, I mean, he's got substantial ties to the community. I mean, he's got real roots there. He's been in office for 25 years. He's definitely very, very good on progressive issues, very good on labor issues. You have James Solomon, which is a councilman in the area that I represented. Good track record, smart guy, and definitely, certainly viable. And then the council president is the only African-American woman running, and she's been a terrific partner for me. So it's kind of hard to navigate a little bit. I think closer to September, I'll take a look at it, maybe engaging if I'm the nominee or not the nominee. I would actually think about that probably in different terms, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and it's a nonpartisan election, so there's no primary.
Correct.
How do you feel about that? You think that's a good system?
Yeah, I love it. I moved the elections to November to drive down cost and increase voter turnout, which I think is important. I think nonpartisan elections are a good thing because it forces you to actually communicate with independents and Republicans. And because you're not relying on this typical party infrastructure, you got to earn everybody's votes. I got to actually talk to Charlie and say, this is the reasons why I'm going to be good. People that run on these lines or with county or party support sometimes become too comfortable, so to speak, with like the fact that these party infrastructure will carry them through. Being in a nonpartisan election, you don't have that luxury, and I think it's a good thing ultimately.
Okay. Well, speaking of elections, in 2020, you moved to, or you pushed for abolishing school board elections, not having the school board be elected anymore. Why? It didn't happen, but why did you even consider such a undemocratic move?
Here's what I think about that. We didn't end up doing it ultimately, and I said that, you know, what I said, and I still believe, is that there's better accountability when you can hold a mayor responsible. And I wasn't going to do it for me. I was actually going to implement the change for the next mayor. That was the ultimate objective on this. So I think the policy is a good policy. I didn't want it to be perceived in any way that I was doing something to benefit me. So I was going to do something that only started when the next mayor came in. But the reality of the situation is that most people don't know who their Board of Education members are. They don't. And most people blame the mayor for everything that happens. And the mayor gets a lot of benefit also and praise for things that happen, sometimes undeserved on both sides. And I thought that accountability in the school system, which drives your property taxes and is one of the most important things in a municipality, knowing that this person is responsible for it is a good thing from a public policy standpoint. So there's a couple municipalities in New Jersey that do that, and they've had mixed outcomes on this. But I think holding people in elected office accountable would be a better situation than having these adverse relationships between Board of Educations and municipal governments. What do you think? I mean,
we actually used to be one of the ones that didn't have elections in New Brunswick, and you know, I was part of the campaign to change it. Yeah.
And how's it worked out?
It's, I think it's better, but it has not, resolved all the problems.
I think part of the issue in New Brunswick, okay, is that you've had mayors that have been here for long periods of time, so change is good. So part of the problem is that people get comfortable in the seats, right? And you don't have a perspective of that these seats are borrowed or rented by the public to us, and it's not owned by us, right? And I think in New Brunswick, you've had really, and in a lot of places in Middlesex, as a matter of fact, you've had really long-term mayors. People get complacent, and maybe they're not thinking always about how to be innovative and how to use these things in a positive way. So that's why that system that you had before maybe wasn't the best for this functioning mayor and government, but it probably is, I think, just a better system if you have a forward-thinking mayor. I mean, look, I could run for mayor again in Jersey City, and I think I could win. I'm not, because I think change is a good thing regardless of the outcome of the governor's race. And I could see in my own thought process, like with those first term, you have like a ton of ideas. I want to change this, I want to do that. And I'm still excited about the job, but I approach it in a different way. And I think that initial excitement about change and aggressive on this is healthy for a city. And so I'm gonna see some other mayor next year in that office for sure.
Right. So if you lose the primary for governor, you won't be filing to run again.
Yeah, because I also don't think, like, I love Jersey City, and I don't think it's a good fallback position. I don't think it's respectful to the residents or the city that lives there to say that I wanted this other job, and now that I didn't get it, it's so important for me to stay in elected office that I'm gonna stay there. We have 2 congresspeople that actually did the opposite of what I'm saying. They said, I want to run for Congress. They tricked people into kind of giving them their vote, and then a week later said, I'm going to run for governor, which tells you about their priorities, telling you that they are more interested in staying in elected office than actually fixing the problems. And it tells you about their commitment to fixing the state of New Jersey's problems, because they're more interested in a political fallback position. I mean, I just don't think that's the right way to approach this.
Let's talk about a big issue, the climate crisis. Right now we got a wildfire burning in South Jersey, and
a president who doesn't believe in climate change.
Right, and it's not the first time we've had this. We've had poor air quality. We've got fossil fuels continuing to dominate. What would you do as governor to address the climate crisis and mitigate?
I want to highlight for people that as a guy who's lived in New Jersey my whole life, okay, we've had 2 huge fires in the last 2 years, okay, and I don't remember another time in my lifetime where you had the same sort of incident. Do you? Maybe I'm wrong about that.
It's definitely worse than it's been before.
Like where there's huge brush fires that are difficult to put out for some period of time. And
we were even getting the pollution from the Canadian wildfires.
Well, true, 100%.
Really,
100%. That was
really concerning. Yeah.
Look, I think that for New Jersey, you have a president that doesn't believe in climate change. There's no mayor that has leaned more into environmental issues than we've done in Jersey City. I mean, there's nobody. Whether it's microgrids or mass transit investment or stormwater runoff or flood mitigation or electrification of our vehicles. I mean, we punch above our weight for sure. And I think any environmentalist would tell you that. I think that you need to approach it as the governor by not saying kind of pie in the sky things that you need to rely on the federal government to achieve. Our hope and our objective over the next 4 years should be to move the climate change conversation forward in New Jersey, despite a president that has no belief or willingness to support. So what does that mean? So you need to focus on things that we don't rely on the federal government for. Open space preservation, moratorium on warehouses, open space acquisition, more green acres opportunities, flood mitigation. How do you get more flood mitigation pumping stations into municipalities, things that we can afford? And then setting up the procurement process so that the next time we have a Democratic president is not this same lag of time on like wind energy, and you could hit the ground running when you need to actually get moving.
You touched on transportation. Talk a little bit about how you would be different than Phil Murphy, what you would do to address.
I think Phil Murphy has been a failure on transportation. I think it's one of the biggest gaps. And you think about housing issues, you talk about employment issues, you talk about poverty issues. They're all tied to transportation, because if there's no transportation that's reliable, all those other things suffer. In Jersey City, I have more experience on transportation than any mayor in the state of New Jersey. We built the largest microgrid system in the state of New Jersey. We've done 2.5 million rides in the last 4 years. It's actually the largest. Yeah, it's actually the largest in the country right now.
And they just started one here, actually.
They did.
The county decided to
great. That's a great thing. We've been doing that now for 5 years. It's the most successful system in the country, is what VIA would tell you. We are in the ferry business, unfortunately. You know, we're the first to do Vision Zero, which the governor just adopted. We achieved it in 2022. First city to do that. We have the largest bike share program, bike infrastructure, protected bikers. I mean, we're very into transportation because it's a passion of mine. So what would be different? First, I was the only candidate that was a supporter of congestion pricing. Everybody else took an easy political place. I said it's a good thing if you believe in health, if you believe in the environment, if you believe in mass transit. And I've been proven to be right, even though it was a political risk. I'm the only one that says that we're going to cancel the Turnpike widening project because it's a silly project, and we're going to invest that into mass transit. $12 billion.
Yeah.
And you should be actually investing that into the Camden Gloucester light rail and the Bergen extension light rail, amongst others. But those are the two priority stations. I talk about the fact that the 5-year temporary New Jersey Transit funding on the corporate business tax that Phil Murphy implemented, which is an idea from my paper, it sunsets.
Yeah.
And the problem is not only that it sunsets, which is clearly an issue, but you can't bond against a 5-year revenue. You need perpetuity, and you bond against that revenue in order to upgrade train stations, because nobody's going to want to go to a train station that feels terrible. You need someplace that's clean and modern and like somebody cares about. Technology needs to be invested in. And then finally, I think the buses. 20 years ago, New Jersey Transit has become privatized with regard to much of their bus routes. It's not operated by New Jersey Transit, which is a disconnect from mission. Government never makes money on public transportation. If you're trying to have a private entity make money on it, it's a total disconnect from the mission. So when it suffers on ridership, they try to squeeze the route by maybe cleaning it less maintenance in order to monetize it. And that's a disconnect from the priorities of bus and train from a government standpoint. So we would change all those things. I talk about it a lot.
You do. For our audience
Yes.
here in New Brunswick,
Yes.
what are you gonna? What changes would they notice here in New Brunswick? We've got a lot of Rutgers students here. Governor plays a role in appointing people to the board at
Yeah.
Rutgers. Talk about Rutgers and New Brunswick and what you want to see change here.
First of all, I think Rutgers has become more political over the last 4 and 8 years. You've seen a gradual decline in investment in the academic side, and it's becoming more political and more of a focus on football and Big Ten athletics. And I think that the athletics is fine, but it's been at the expense of other important investments, and you've seen tuitions increase. We have a very, very aggressive plan around tuition caps. First of all, we were the first to talk about this with regards to 2%, similar to something that was implemented in property taxes. And then on smaller universities, consolidation, and then we revised how a lot of this stuff is funded. And then most importantly, you got to have less political hacks on these boards. Ultimately, they become more and more politicized, whether it's the Horizon board. You don't have insurance executives there or people that are healthcare executives. You have former politicians. The BPU, same thing. The Rutgers board, the same thing. All these things are like retirement homes for political people. You got to change that, really.
Okay. One thing that you've done in your campaign is you've chosen to support candidates for assembly.
Yeah.
The state assembly.
Really important.
Yeah, including one right here, Loretta Rivers.
She's terrific.
And talk about that strategy and the candidates you've chosen to support and why.
So the way I look at it is that primaries are healthy. They create better candidates. They create better dialogue, more accountability to the public, and we've learned that in a couple different ways. First of all, we learned it on the federal level with Joe Biden for sure. And we should have had a primary process. We all knew we should have had. We didn't, and we paid the price for that, right? Because it became apparent that maybe he wasn't capable of the job late, and then Kamala had a short runway to run a campaign. We've also learned primaries are important here in New Jersey. You have a legislature that rolls back Oprah, public records access, that rolls back election finance reform. Thousands of activists go down to Trenton and say, don't do this. It's a bad idea, and then they still vote for it because they're not accountable to the public. They feel they're accountable to a political boss. If they had a primary where they thought they would lose, I promise you they'd be thinking more about the voter than the person. Loretta is a person that came to us via community activists in the Piscataway area. She's somebody that has focused her life on building housing for less fortunate people. She is very involved in the Piscataway reform initiatives, and she is somebody that anybody who looks objectively at her resume would say, I would be proud to have her represent me in Trenton, and I'm going to do everything I can to get over the goal line.
Speaking of housing, one of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
You've brought out a significant number of new units online.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of, Jersey City's known for being a pricey place to live.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on gentrification, and what would you do as governor to address the cost of housing?
I think there's two things. I think, first of all, Jersey City's prices have escalated, as has Newark and Hoboken and the entire region, because New York City is not building enough, and you don't have enough of a cohesive plan for the region in order to force building. And you have this NIMBYism, not my backyard mentality, that has totally co-opted housing growth in New Jersey. Unless you have a shortage of housing, and that is decreased supply, demand is high, thus prices go up. Okay, so I think at the core, you need to have a statewide plan, statewide goals, and clear initiatives. We have outlined the most comprehensive, detailed housing initiatives of any candidate, because I know and I've experienced on this. Also, I've been very clear, because I think it's important from a reform standpoint. Sheena Collin is the lieutenant governor that I will be running with. She is the head of the American Planning Association for New Jersey. She is an unbelievable mayor in a suburban town, South Orange. Complements my skill set very well, and her entire track record, Charlie, is around housing. She's done a lot of good things, but she would tell you that is her jam, that is her thing, that is like where she excels. And we are going to be an administration that is smart about growth and that has a track record about it.
Yeah, are there specific things you would do differently than, say, the current governor? Like,
yeah, I mean, look, I testified in Trenton. I think today you have places like Jersey City, Newark, Hoboken that don't participate in affordable housing obligations. I think that's really important. I think that most of the state grants, that $2 billion that were set aside, focus on places like Jersey City, Hoboken, Newark, instead of incentivizing areas that are more suburban and need deeper incentives to build the housing supply. I think that we need to be thinking more about the middle market and revisiting kind of some of those quotas on how and where people live. I mean, we got a kind of a detailed plan, how you sell tax credits, who can apply for them, how that works, all important. I think that building 68 or approving 68,000 units in Jersey City, being the backbone of growth for New Jersey, you learn a thing or two. So, we've outlined a really comprehensive plan that I think nobody else can come even close to.
Let's move to cannabis. It's
Yeah.
When Phil Murphy took office, marijuana was criminalized. It's changed. It's become a business, a legal industry. How would your approach differ on legalized cannabis, and maybe you can talk about Jersey City and what you did there?
So, first of all, the first place in New Jersey to decriminalize cannabis was Jersey City. Okay. And New York Times wrote a story about it. I mean, people who are watching could actually Google that, and we're very proud of that. When cannabis was approved in the legislature, most municipalities, despite the fact that it was approved overwhelmingly in the state, a lot of municipalities barred it. And then you'd have these mayors that set artificial limits. They'd be like, we're going to have 2 dispensaries in our town. We're going to have 7, based on no metric, just based on what the mayor feels, right? We've taken a different approach, because that approach of arbitrarily saying we're going to have 1 or 5 or 7 became very political, with donors and access on who gets approved for those licenses in certain areas. And it totally went away from the intention of minority communities having access, because they were disenfranchised or criminalized over cannabis for decades. So in Jersey, we've taken a different approach. We didn't set caps. We didn't let the politics factor into it. What I've done is said, let's let the market decide what is the right number of dispensaries. So we approve them based on that. We don't have any issue with the number. And we let the ones that are good, they're going to excel, and the ones that are poor are going to by themselves fail. And over time, the market will regulate itself. And I think it's a healthier way. It's a less political way, less influential from the political donor side, and healthier towards cannabis growth. I think that Phil Murphy has made a mistake on home grow. I think home grow should be allowed. I think that he's been
People should be able to grow their own.
Yeah. I think that, and I think that he's been very slow. The whole trend has been slow to adopt regulations and move forward on whether it's consumption lounges or even basic dispensaries. This thing shouldn't take 4, 5, 6 years. The reason that it did is beyond me, and it's the same reason that we haven't been able to get wind energy going, because we were very slow with implementation. We need to do a better job in Trenton of connecting dots and moving forward on initiatives beyond the press release.
Okay. Also on cannabis, you've got a bit of a battle with some people in your police department. You are taking the stand that
what do you think?
Police officers shouldn't be able to,
do you have an opinion on
use.
it?
I'm a little perplexed as to why Jersey City is the only municipality that's taken that position, saying officers can face major discipline if they test positive for cannabis.
Because other mayors
would you rather they drink
because other I'll tell you, that's not a fair comparison. Other mayors are scared. They say in private, you are correct. The police union president, Colligan, before he left, I sat with him at the city diner. There were 5 people out there. And he said, I agree with you personally, but my membership will never agree, the younger people. And I said, okay, well, that's not really bravery or the right thing to do. Let me tell you kind of the rationale on this, okay?
Please.
Cannabis is different than alcohol, where alcohol, I can give you a test right now and tell you if you are intoxicated from drinking alcohol an hour
Still
or 5
under the
hours
influence.
still under the influence. Cannabis, you can't do that. You can't differentiate if somebody consumed cannabis an hour before a shift, a day before a shift, or a week before a shift, but it stays in your system for 30 days, okay? And there's no way to test that. There's no way to regulate that. Today, it is a matter of time before somebody tests positive after making a split-second judgment call around life or death from a police standpoint, because we see that all the time. Okay, that somebody makes a judgment call, and anytime they use their firearm, they automatically go for drug tests and to make sure blood screening. And if they test positive for something, tons of litigation will ensue afterwards.
Right. Now, so you see it as a liability.
It's a huge liability, let alone a risk to the public. Now, cannabis is a Schedule I drug according to the federal government. Period. I don't agree with that, but that's what it is today. The ATF, the rules around who can have a firearm, which the city of Jersey City signs off on, you, meaning me, and the city needs to sign off, as well as the police officer, that they are not knowingly consuming any Schedule I drugs, okay? So there is a direct conflict between the ATF regulations to provide a person a firearm versus their ability to do a police and consume cannabis. Those things are in conflict by law. We have said to those police officers, you could have a desk job. You just cannot carry a firearm. And that is the rub of our litigation there. Now, that's the legal side of it. Let me tell you the practical side. Every other state in the country, including New York, that has legalized cannabis has carved out different professions that they say this person should not be allowed to use cannabis. Okay? New Jersey is the only state that said we're not going to carve out anybody. I would say, all right, Charlie, how would you feel if you were having a heart attack and you called 911 and the guy in the ambulance is testing positive for cannabis? How would you feel about that? How would you feel if you let your kid go with a bus driver who's testing positive for cannabis? How would you feel about certain common sense professions that should probably be carved out to this? And so I think that we're on the right side of this, and we're going to win in federal court because it's clear as day. But other mayors agree with me; they just don't want to say it publicly.
Okay. We've got to ask about some of the things that have happened in your administration, like Police Chief Phil Zaki. He pleaded guilty to theft or bribery in connection with an official action. Got probation.
Do you know what he was doing?
Was it the extra duty?
Stuff? I believe it was actually prior to me taking office as the mayor. Okay, I'm pretty sure about that. But yeah, he was working an extra duty on the in jobs that he said he was working at. They were essentially no-show jobs at the housing authority prior to us. Now, I will tell you this: when I came in, we changed the police department dramatically. I mean, we've created more discipline, more accountability. We've terminated more police officers than anybody. We brought in an outside police director. And you'd be hard to argue that we haven't reformed the police department more than any other municipality in New Jersey. But, the reality is that reform takes time, and you got to change some of these habits. Those sort of things, I was the first to say that Zaki should be held accountable for this. And it was an unfortunate outcome, but, we changed the entire off-duty system in New Jersey. It was in Jersey City, we conflicted with the police department on this for some period of time because we didn't want it to be abused. And you could Google this stuff and read the backstory on this, but you could see the changes that we made specifically around off-duty.
Okay. And another gentleman that you were associated with, Sedan Thomas. He was a Board of Ed member. Also faced a criminal case. Talk about that, what you learned from that.
Sudan Thomas was an activist and a volunteer. He ran for the Board of Education with the support of the teachers union first. So let's not like omit that. I was late to the party there as a supporter of his. Okay, and who would know that somebody is taking bribes? Unfortunately, I mean, he wasn't working in our administration at that time. He was working at on a board for the Jersey City Employment and Training. He was on that board, and he ran for the school board twice with the support of the teachers union. Okay, so just to give you perspective on it. And he was held responsible for bribery, and as he should be held responsible for bribery. But I can't control what people do in their private life. You try to give the best people you think are going to be honest an opportunity. I have 3,500 employees that report to me. The unfortunate reality is that often people are doing the wrong thing. You try to discipline them, send a message, and create barriers around people so that they will no longer have the ability to do that. But those sort of things take time, and he paid a price for that. And it's unfortunate, but justice was served.
And in that case, it was Matthew O'Donnell was involved, right?
He took the, well, I mean, this guy had the rare double of, I believe he was actually indicted both at the state and the federal. So it was like a little bit of both. I don't know if both of them was Matt O'Donnell, but part of it was Matt O'Donnell.
Right, so he was the one doing the donations.
I don't know if it was state or federal or Matt O'Donnell's both, but he was involved in one of those two, yeah.
Okay, and talk about Matt O'Donnell. He was part of the administration, right? You didn't have him in?
No, I mean,
did he get work from that?
So he did work in probably 30 municipalities, and we terminated him, by the way.
Right.
And I mean, Jersey City's so huge. We have probably 50 different law firms that work with Jersey City in various capacities, and he was one of them. I hadn't spoken to him for a long period of time, years at that point. And over time, we brought our tax appeals, which is what he was doing, the tax appeals back in-house. The allegations, as I understood it, was he was trying to get work with the Board of Education. It didn't have anything to do with the city. He was trying to get work with the Board of Education where Sudan was at. And that was the bribery thing. It wasn't related to the Jersey City component. We were never involved in any of that stuff. And like I said, we terminated him just because we brought that stuff in-house. I didn't know any of that stuff was going on, but the city had nothing to do with that.
Okay, and that was one of the cases that, as you mentioned, was federal and state, but the state attorney general's office brought that. They've taken some heat over how that's been handled in terms of the tactics that were used and.
I've read some of that stuff that they let meaning Matt O'Donnell keep some money, and he was working through the whole process as he was some sort of confidential informant for them. And when I don't know the details of that, it's really hard because I'm not in the Attorney General's office to tell you this was or that was. What I can tell you is that it never implicated the city or my administration in any way. And of course, I say, I knew Matt O'Donnell because, like I said, we have probably every law firm in the state of New Jersey of size that does any municipal work has some sort of connectivity to Jersey City and Newark and big municipalities, just because there's not a lot of people that do work in that space anymore. It's a very small universe because the rates we pay are relatively very, very small. So most law firms don't want to do it. So we have a lot of law firms that work for us, and they were one of them.
Got it. And I guess
I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, well,
it's good. It's good. Yeah.
What I'm getting at here is you support Matt Platkin and you want to keep him as the Attorney General. You have confidence in how he's been running the office and the
I think,
OPIA.
I it's funny. Somebody else asked us about the OPIA right now. I think Matt Platkin has done a good job. Okay, I think that like my administration, you could pick apart one thing here or there. You could say, what about this situation? I mean, I've been the mayor for 12 years. I've been more scrutinized than, minus Phil Murphy, any public official in the state of New Jersey. And you'd say, why? Because the Jersey Journal, which is a property of NJ.com, up until January, covered Jersey City every single day with a daily newspaper that hit NJ.com. And some of the best reporters in the state of New Jersey, like Terrence McDonald, was assigned to me for 6 years. His Twitter handle used to say, cover at Steven Fulop, like he was assigned to me. So everything has been scrutinized on this stuff. It's hard for me to say that Matt Platkin has been perfect because nobody's been perfect, okay? Sure. But do I think that his body of work shows courage in tough situations, taking on fights, and importance of continuity in a Trump administration? The answer is yes. And so, I would give him the opportunity to say, regarding the OPIA, I've read the articles. I don't know all the details about, the people there, how it works, why it works. And that's probably more of a conversation with Matt Placken than anybody else. But I think scrutiny and oversight of public officials is a good thing. So I don't see a problem with it.
All right. Well, that's something we agree on. I think that's all the questions I have, but I did
That's
want to
it.
just give you the chance if you
No, that's good.
could
I like-
tell people about how to get involved if they want to help your
Yeah,
campaign,
yeah.
or any
I-
closing message you have for
The closing message
voters.
is that our campaign is different, and I hope that people go to the website. It's www.stevenfulop.com and think about volunteering and engaging. And I would say to you, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you ask hard questions and that you probe things that have been covered, because I think that's important. And like I said, for me, for 12 years, we've run a scandal-free administration, with people picking us apart every day or looking to, like you said, Sudan Thomas or this or that. And it never ends up being something with regards to the core team, or we've always taken action and held people accountable for it. And I'm proud of that, because I came into an administration that had massive corruption arrests under Solomon Dweck 2 years before I got there, the largest in the state of New Jersey. And so I appreciate you asking those questions. It's really helpful.
Yeah, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today
Of course.
here in New Brunswick. And thank you all for watching. Please, whatever you do, make sure you exercise your right to vote. The primary is on June 10th. Mail-in ballots are already on the way. It might even be in your mailbox if you're voting by mail. If not, there is early voting starting in June, and then June 10th is the big day, primary election for both the Democrat and Republican Party. And there are many candidates seeking to be your next governor. We were pleased to bring you our first in the series of interviews today with Jersey City Mayor Steven Fulop and candidate for governor. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day, and we'll be